Okay, so for my question, I decided to research how does COVID-19 compare to other significant world epidemics. So I decided to research SARS, smallpox, Black Plague, and then how they all connected to COVID-19. So I started with SARS. That was the first one that I researched and looked at. It's a strand of the coronavirus. And SARS stands for Severe Acute Respiratory Syndrome. Um, it originated in Asia. I don't remember what time. I think it was in 2002 when it first originated in Asia. Um, but then it ended up spreading worldwide from people like traveling through like contact through the air. It like when people cough or sneeze or talk, it gets in the air through like water droplets, and then it's spread throughout the air. There is no cure for SARS. The only thing is like social distancing or and sanitation. Like the only way that you can like prepare for it is like by wearing masks and washing your hands and making sure that you're clean and whatnot. The last transmission of SARS, like the last big case of SARS, was in 2004, and the World Health Organization reports that around 774 people died from SARS. The next one I decided to look into was smallpox. Smallpox is a strand of the Virilia disease. Not really sure how to say that word or if I said it right, but when I was looking it up, that's what I found out about, or that's what it said. It's thought to originally originate in the Egyptian Empire in the 3rd century BCE, but the first written documentation of smallpox was in China in the 4th century. This also spread worldwide from people traveling on boats and things of the such. They discovered a cure for it in 1796, but they didn't release the cure until around 1801. There was a doctor, I can't remember quite what his name was, but he originally decided that he found that milkmaids weren't contracting the disease as often as other people were, and he ended up trying it out on his wife because his son had smallpox, and he like injected it into her body, and she ended up getting like some of the symptoms, but she never ended up actually getting smallpox from it. And then he would do tests on her like months later and stuff like that, and realized that it like helped prevent the process of her getting smallpox. And then that's when he wrote his paper or whatever about how it was how that helped, the vaccine helped. The last transmission or naturally reported case was in 1975. I believe it was in India. It was somewhere in Asia. And they just quarantined this girl 24 hours a day. She had people standing outside her house until she eventually no longer um, had smallpox. 3 in 10 people who get smallpox will die, and in the 20th century, it was estimated that 300 million people died, which is like a huge amount of people. Like it's one of the biggest plagues. Um, and then the last one that I like, researched to compare to the COVID-19 was the Black Plague. This is a strand. This one's really hard to say. Yersinia pestis. I'm nowhere near. I don't know if I said that right or not. It also originated in Asia in 1348 AD, and it spread worldwide from people traveling on boats and things with rats on them. And the rats would have fleas, and then the fleas, once the rats would die of the disease or die of whatever, the fleas would look for something else to bite onto for that blood, and they would transmit the disease onto the people. So the people weren't actually getting the Black Plague from the rats per se; they were getting it from the fleas that the rats were carrying, and the fleas were like biting the people, and then they all got the disease. And then the disease also was transmitted from coughing and talking and sneezing. When people would do that, they would transmit the disease through the water droplets or through the droplets that get into the air, and then it was spread like that. The Black Plague was spread through all of those, and then also like close contact, touching, things like that. It was pretty much spread through anything, if you were around the dead body or not. Um, The last case was reportedly in 1353 AD, so it lasted for, 5 years around? And it reportedly killed 50 million people, which at that time was about 60% of the world population. When researchers started looking back at smallpox and they were digging up people that had died of smallpox, they saw that these people also had the anthrax disease, which weakens your immune system. And they thought that it was weird that they had the anthrax disease and the Black Plague. So they think that the Black Plague would attack people with weak immune systems. So like all three, or when looking at all three of these and then comparing them to COVID-19, most of them originated in Asia, which I think is just because there's such a big population there and everyone is in such close contact with each other there, and also there's such a big trade route. They were all spread worldwide from people traveling and being in close contact with each other, and they're all airborne. Well, smallpox isn't really airborne, but the other two, they were airborne, and then so is COVID-19. They're all airborne. They all come through water droplets in the air. SARS, smallpox, and Black Plague can all be prevented by like washing hands, social distance, sanitation. And then all killed mass groups of people. The Black Plague is really cool though, because they were like one of the first groups of people that were like, well, if this is being passed on through people being close to each other and people touching people, so like people who didn't have the disease, they started quarantining themselves, and they started like they would move to rural districts that didn't have that many people or that were less populated, and that's how they ended up actually stopping the Black Plague, is by just quarantining themselves. So now that we know like how these world plagues compare to COVID-19, maybe scientists and society should look at these past events and notice a trend and really start looking at like how we can fix this problem fast so that way we can get back to our everyday life. And like the easiest way to do that is to look into the past. Yeah.